Sylvie snorted softly, exhaling smoke. You giving him eggs? That's cruel. He'll be gone before the first camion leaves. Marcel ignored her. We got truckers out there want breakfast. 2 eggs, omelet, scrambled, don't care. You mess it up, gammon, you're gone. No cash, no staff meal, nothing. The threat hung in the steam. Gerard glanced over again, eyes briefly softer under the bushy brows. Slip once and you're out, he added. It sounded less like a threat and more like a law of nature he was warning a child about, like gravity or the way hot oil burned if you disrespected it. Jean-Luc nodded once. His heart pounded against his ribs, quick and sharp. It had done that before every service, even at his peak. He let it run. Nerves were part of the say-up. He shrugged off his coat, suddenly conscious of how little there was of him underneath. Sylvie's gaze flicked to his arms, to the thin muscles wrapped tight around bone. She looked like she was about to say something, then changed her mind and just jerked her chin toward the hand sink. Wash yourself, she said. I'm not serving trucker's disease with my coffee. He washed his hands in lukewarm water. The cheap soap left his skin dry, but not cleaner. The tap dripped even when fully closed, each drop hitting the rusted basin with the same dull note, counting off beats like a metronome. As he turned away, the overhead bulb above the egg station flickered, once, twice, then brightened, casting a stark circle of light over the dented tin pans waiting there. It was the only bulb in the kitchen that seemed to have any interest in working properly. See that? Sylvie murmured behind him, half to Gerard, half to herself. The eggs like him. Eggs don't like anyone, Gerard said, stacking plates. They break if you look at them wrong. Still, his eyes lingered on Jean-Luc as the boy stepped up to the station, as if there were something more to see. The egg station was a sort of exile at the far end of the line, where the hood's pull felt weaker and heat pooled. A narrow gas burner muttered blue. Beside it, a wire basket of eggs leaned drunkenly. A dented tin pan sat on the edge of the burner, its bottom warped into a slight hill. The handle's plastic cover had long since melted away. A rag was wound around it, black from countless grips. Next to it, in a cracked ceramic bowl, a fork. That was it. No nonstick surfaces, no immaculate copper, no battery of pans ready and gleaming, just the bare minimum required for heat to meet egg. Big Marcel watched, arms folded. 2 eggs, omelet, he said, trucker special, and hurry up. Bernard's going to eat his steering wheel if he doesn't get his protein. From the dining room, as if summoned by name, a deep voice yelled, Marcel, I'm wasting away out here. Shut your gell, Marcel roared back without looking. He jerked his chin at Jean-Luc. Go on then, impress me. In another life, in another kitchen, people had said the same thing, impress me. But it had been a challenge couched in respect, almost a joke. Here, it was simply a test, nothing personal. Everyone in this room had been tested like this, once. Jean-Luc reached for an egg. It felt, improbably, warm in his hand. Not from the kitchen heat, which hadn't had time to soak into its shell yet, but from something else. The smooth curve nestled into his palm like an old friend. He tapped it against the side of the bowl, crisp crack. The shell broke where it ought to. The egg slipped into the bowl in one clean motion, yolk bright and whole, whites falling like silk. His hand remembered the angle, the force, the motion. His wrist rotated by a fraction of a degree without consulting his brain. It had done this 1,000,000 times in 100 kitchens. It didn't care that the ceiling here was stained, or that the light hummed overhead instead of buzzing gently in a Michelin-starred glow. He cracked the second egg, the same sound, the same clean motion. 2 golden eyes looked up from the bowl. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sylvie pause in her scribbling of an order on her pad, one eyebrow slightly raised. Gerard's towel, mid-snap, stilled. Even the radio seemed to hush for a second, as if disinterested in competing with the small ritual. Jean-Luc picked up the fork. This was the moment that was boring to watch and holy to do. He pierced the yolks and beat, not too hard. The eggs pulled together slowly, threads of white winding into gold. His arm moved in a steady circle, elbow loose, wrist easy. The fork made a soft, almost inaudible clink each time it brushed the side of the bowl. He could feel it as the mixture shifted, viscous resistance giving way little by little, smoothing out. He stopped just before it went too far. Small streaks of unmixed white still traced faint lines through the yellow. That was good. That meant texture. He salted, just a pinch between 3 fingers. Reflex. Too much salt now and the flavor would flatten later, even for truckers. He hit the pan with a glance. He tipped in a nub of something that might pass as butter. It spat angrily, the fat foaming irregularly, smelling faintly off, like it had been cut with margarine. He didn't flinch. He tilted the pan, rolling the melting fat around, coaxing it up the warped sides. The pan protested, hissing in patches where the bottom bulged away from the flame. The egg deserved better, but this would do. "Come on," Marcel muttered. "Any slower and we'll serve dinner." Jean-Luc ignored him. He poured. The eggs hit the pan with a soft sigh, like relief. They spread, thin and even, over the metal. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the edges began to set, a fine lace of cooked white forming where egg met heat. He lifted the handle, jerking his wrist, letting the runny center rush toward the hottest parts. His body shifted into that small dance it remembered. Up, tilt, shake, scrape. He coaxed the curds toward the middle, never breaking them too small, never leaving them too large. The eggs moved like a living thing, and he knew, without looking, where the flame was hottest by how they sounded, the way the sizzle pitched lower as they thickened. Sylvie watched, arms folded, cigarette forgotten. Gerard half turned away from the sink. The truckers on the other side of the pass had gone briefly quiet. Their voices dipped as if someone had turned down their volume knobs. As the center remained just barely liquid, he gave the pan one last sharp jerk, gathering the mass toward the far side. Then, with a motion that had once made apprentices gasp, he flicked his wrist. The omelet rolled onto itself. Once, twice. A neat cylinder, ends just barely tucked, still trembling with softness, landed along the near edge of the pan. The smell rose up. Warm, creamy, nothing fancy, just egg at its best. He killed the flame. On the pass, a chipped white plate waited, a sad, wilting sprig of parsley on its edge. He slid the omelet onto the plate, letting it sit with its seam down. A faint sheen of fat crowned its surface, catching the yellow light and making it glow almost golden, indecently delicate in this kitchen, a soft thing in a hard place. For a second, as he looked at it, Jean-Luc forgot where he was. The edges of the kitchen blurred. He was back somewhere else, years and miles away, plating a similar cylinder, but topping it with caviar and chives. The murmurs from the dining room had been different then, higher, more practiced. He'd loved that sound. It had hummed through his bones. Now there was just the low rumble of truckers and the clatter of cutlery. But the omelet did not know the difference. He picked up the plate and turned to the pass. On the other side of the hatch, a red-nosed trucker with a cap pushed far back on his head leaned forward. His belly strained against his suspenders. He had the look of someone who'd been up since dawn and seen more highways than proper beds. "About time," he said, though his eyes tracked the omelet as it approached. Jean-Luc slid the plate forward. Sylvie's hand shot out automatically, steadying it, her fingers brushing his for the briefest instant. Her eyes flicked from the omelet to his face, then back again. For once she didn't add any cutting remark. She just gave a small, nearly imperceptible nod and nudged the plate out. The trucker grabbed his fork. The kitchen held its breath. He cut into the omelet. The tip of the knife met the thin, just firm exterior, then slipped into the center. The cut parted easily, revealing an inside that was barely set, custardy and pale yellow, with just a hint of gloss. A puff of steam rose, carrying with it the simple, right smell of gently cooked egg. He lifted a forkful to his mouth. Around him, the dining room noise dipped a notch, as if someone had turned the volume knob on the room down. He chewed once. His eyes widened. For half a second, something like grief crossed his face, softening the weathered lines. Then he swallowed, and something else took its place. Surprise, maybe. Almost embarrassed pleasure. "Damn," he said quietly. "Like my mom's." He paused, then added in a lower voice, "Better." His friend across the table, thicker, with a mustache that looked like it made decisions for him, snorted. "Your mum burns water," he said, but his own eyes were fixed on the omelet. Shut up and taste, the first one shot back, shoving the plate toward him. The second took a bite. He didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes for a second, like a man listening to a favorite song that he'd forgotten he loved. In the kitchen, the radio fuzzed into silence between songs, just for that heartbeat. The fluorescent above the X station brightened, humming a pure, clear note that cut through the grease-laden air. The sizzling from the grill seemed to soften, as if the meat, too, was recognizing a tiny miracle had just happened a meter away. Sylvie at the pass stood very still. Her cigarette burned down faster than usual, ash lengthening, but she didn't flick it away. There was a strange softness around her mouth that the others didn't often see. Big Marcel's face did not move much. A flicker in the heavy lines around his eyes, perhaps. A small shift in the way his mouth rested. He snorted, a sound that tried to be dismissive and failed halfway. Bah, he said loudly, for the room. Lucky, do it again. He grabbed 2 more eggs from the basket and tossed them. They arced through the hot air, turning slowly. They should have fallen into the bowl with a clatter of shell. Instead, they seemed to slow for a fraction of a second, just before they landed, righting themselves mid-flight, as if steered by unseen fingers, and dropped perfectly into his waiting hands. No one commented. This was a kitchen. Strange things happened in kitchens all the time. Soufflés rising when they shouldn't, sauces that refused to split even after their 20th sin. A couple of obedient eggs were nothing. Jean-Luc didn't question it either. His pulse had steadied. The first omelet had burned away some of the shaky newness from his limbs. He moved with a little more ease now, though the weight of eyes on his back was heavier. He cracked, he beat, he tilted and swirled. He listened, not just with his ears, but with the parts of him that had memorized a lifetime of tiny kitchen-specific music. The evaporation hiss, the shift and sizzle as water gave way to fat, the almost silent exhale of properly cooked egg leaving the pan. Another omelet slid out onto another chipped plate. The second trucker dug in, his mustache twitched. Shit, he said with feeling. Marcel, you've been holding out on us, eh? Who's this kid? Nobody, Marcel said automatically, but his eyes flicked to Jean-Luc with something new in them. Curiosity, irritation, a prickle of threat? Maybe. Talent, complicated routines. Behind them, Gerard snapped his towel again, this time in something that might have been approval. The sound cracked through the steamy air like a seal breaking. The lunch rush rolled in like weather. More orders shouted. More tickets slapped down at the pass. Eggs, sausages, steak frites, omelets with ham, with cheese, with whatever scraps of yesterday's roast could be diced small enough. The truckers who'd gotten the first omelets told their friends. Word moved quickly between men whose lives revolved around routes and timing. 2 more like Bernard had. Same eggs as table 3. Give me what you gave that idiot, but with cheese. Marcel barked. Sylvie ran, her tray balanced against the ebb and flow of shouting, laughter, the occasional argument. The radio found a rhythm, ABBA giving way to a scratchy bit of Gainsbourg, then to an announcer talking about traffic like it was a living creature that had decided to spend the day sulking on the peripheric. Through it all, Jean-Luc stood at his small patch of stove and made eggs. The world narrowed to the feel of the fork in his hand, the weight of the pan handle, the dance of heat and timing. His body leaned into the familiar sequence. He felt each omelet take shape, the way a sculptor feels the statue inside the block of stone. Outside his body, chaos. Inside his circle of light, order. He adjusted for each plate almost without thinking. The man with the scar along his cheekbone, fingers calloused from tools, wore a permanent squint, like someone always looking at sun on snow. He'd want his omelet a bit firmer, nothing oozing. The young guy with the too big jacket and the nervous laugh, on his first long haul, would pretend he didn't care, but his hands betrayed a slight tremor that meant he needed something soft, something that didn't fight his fork. He should not have been able to know these things, not from a glance across a dingy dining room, but flavor had always been more than taste to him. He'd known, even as André, how to read people's palates in the lines of their faces, in the way they held their forks. Now, in this reborn body, that odd sense had not only survived, it felt sharper, like someone had wiped grease from his inner lenses. He salted some plates a hair more. He left some barely kissed with pepper. He never looked entirely at any one diner. But as forks rose and fell, he heard their little noises of surprise, contentment, relief. In this place of loud engines and heavier jokes, those sounds were almost fragile. He protected them with each flick of his wrist. Halfway through the rush, while sliding yet another plate toward the pass, he looked up and caught his reflection in the metal shelf. For a second, just a second, the steam condensed and ghosted just right, and the reflection was overlapping again. Andre's lined, intent face imposed over Jean-Luc's younger one. The older man's eyes met his. No reproach there, no arrogance, just a kind of wry amusement, as if to say, "So this is where we start again? Fine, let's see what you do with it." Then the steam drifted, and there was only Jean-Luc, cheeks flushed from the heat, hair clinging damp to his forehead, eyes bright and a little wild. "Come on," Marcel barked from the grill. "I said eggs, not snail mail. Faster." Jean-Luc grinned unexpectedly. "If you wanted speed, you should have hired someone else," he shouted back, "but then you'd still be serving rubber." Sylvie choked on her cigarette smoke, laughing. "Ooh there," she said. "The basement boy has teeth. Marcel, he'll bite." Marcel's snort this time held an edge of laughter. "If he bites, I put him in the fryer," he said, but his spatula hit the grill with a lighter touch. The bulb above the egg station hummed pleasantly on, bright in its greasy cage. By the time the last of the lunch rush staggered out, bellies full and belts discreetly loosened, the kitchen of Le Gutter had transformed from battlefield to exhausted, steaming trench.